everybody. Welcome to 2024 and the season for the Full Tilt Leadership Podcast. It is all about today, Lacey Wean, who is, your title is so long, Lacey. She's the director of geospatial, autonomy robotics, Oracle, and law enforcement or public safety efforts at Carahsoft. And the theme that Lacey picked for us today that I'm so excited about is leaders build relationships. So welcome to the show, Lacey.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So Lacey is a friend to our all of our different platforms. She's been on the Dawn of Drones. She'll be upcoming on the Dawn of Autonomy this year. And I'm just so excited to have you, Lacey, now on this leadership podcast because we're going to start at the beginning and it really dives deep into who you are and what you bring to Carahsoft and the culture that you've helped create there. And just the theme you picked, I think, speaks volumes of leaders build relationships. So let's start in the beginning. And let's talk about your background because in my experience, of course, those first relationships are in the house, right? They're with your family and in your neighborhood and with your friends. And here we have a picture already of you as a little girl. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, of course. So my upbringing. So I'm from a small town in Virginia. It's called 10th Legion. It's like most of you guys probably don't know where that is, but it's about 2 hours outside of the DC, Northern Virginia area. I lived in that area my entire life until I ended up going to college. It's still one of my favorite places to visit, a great place to go home to. And so for some background too, I think what really helped shape my career and my path as a leader. So at Carahsoft, I'm one of the sales leaders in the company. I've been with the company for 12 years, but it's always something where I feel like I've been in sales like my entire life since I was younger. Both of my parents, owned small businesses. So even as a child, I loved going to work with my mom on a Saturday. I'm like, let me answer the phone. Can I take the calls? Can I answer the phone and write down appointments? And then same with, my dad would get, this is back before you had cell phones. So the number in the phone book was our house phone. And I loved, answering the house phone and helping take his calls and write them down. I know he would get compliments like, wow, your daughter is like, she's great on the phone. I think I was like 5 years old. Talking to his customers and help take notes and, pass it over to him. But I feel like it was a thing where I've always been kind of in sales and able to, interact with people even from such a young age, which I feel like helped really, shape kind of my career path to some extent.
Yeah, so it really sounds like your mom and dad were formative, not just obviously at home and just as part of the family, but in your career from an early time. And I imagine this idea of, relationships and leadership and the connection there, that's something you saw every day probably with your mom and dad then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Something I got to see, firsthand every day by, going to work, answering the phones. And I loved every part of it. Like I still always say, I'm like, the best customer service I've ever seen is just like listening to my dad on the phone. It's always funny to listen to him. Like, he's just so nice and like so helpful. I'm like, wow, this is really impressive. So I learned a lot from that. But I think one of the other great things too was just, growing up in a small town and the sense of community. So getting to, interact with the community, whether it was through different groups I would get involved in, different customers I would see. We always had a really great close relationship, and I still do with my parents' neighbors. I see them every time I go home, and they've been there to help kind of give me good career advice, help make connections as well. So it's being kind of part of that small community is always been really beneficial too.
That's so cool. Now you mentioned, watching and listening to your dad on the phone, but is there any particular event, like as you look back, that you would say it was really formative to your thinking on this idea that leaders build relationships?
Yeah, and I think so. Honestly, I've got a lot of them. It's hard to pick. It's hard to pick an example, Dawn. But when I really thought about this question, I'm like, from early in my childhood, I was always part of a team or part of a group. From being in Girl Scouts to Most people are surprised when they find out that I was actually on a jump rope team um, when I was
I
younger.
love it. I
I
jump
know,
rope in the gym, man. I love that.
yeah,
That's
I
so
know.
funny.
It was really fun. And we used to do, perform at halftime shows at like the local, college games and stuff. It was really fun. But from, being on a team, I was a cheerleader in high school, and after that went on to college and was part of a sorority. I feel like I was always part of a group. So just building that relationship with your teammates, with your peers, getting to know other leaders as part of those groups as well, and take on those leadership roles was really helpful for me. Like, I was always excited, like in my sorority, for example, to take on, hey, I wanted, a chair position. I wanted a leadership position. And, how do you really build those relationships and get there and then contribute to the larger group? So I would say there's a lot of things that I think help contribute to that, and why I think this is, such a relevant topic, both, whether you're in sales or any career, is just building those relationships and continuing to nurture those relationships.
You're talking about you raising your hand for all these leadership positions in particular throughout your career, your education. We're gonna get to your education in a second here, but if we could pop that first picture up again real quick, because I want to highlight what it says on this shirt as it pans out. Go, Lacey, tell them what it says.
It says, "My world, my rules."
I love it. So from an early age, you're like, I'm taking charge, like I'm raising my hand, and I love that. So that's a great saying. But looking back, was there like a particular saying or phrase or something that stands out in your mind that one of your mentors or a leader or someone around you said that really kind of stuck with you throughout your life, that, kind of relevant to this idea of relationships and leadership?
Yeah. So, um, I think one that always still sticks out, and again, kind of relates to this theme as well. My mom would always tell me, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I think this was really important because to me, that really means, having mentors, having sponsors, and having these relationships that can, you know, you work with other people to help you reach your goals to be where you want to be. And then you're surrounding yourself with those people that you want to be like. So, surrounding yourself with people who might be smarter than you, or who might have a job you want, or who might have, a skill that you want. I really took that as like, you can just learn so much from being around other people and building those relationships, and letting people help you get to where you want to be and to reach your goals.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a great segue to talk then about your education, because you mentioned some of your extracurriculars, whether it was the jump rope or the cheerleading, and also later then your sorority. So why don't you walk us a little bit through the time when you were in school and some of the things that helped shape who you are? So here's a great picture of you. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, of course. Um, so for education, so I went to Radford University, also in Virginia. I started there with my major in interior design. Did that for about 2 years until over the summer I had an internship at a law firm. I absolutely loved it so much that I decided, I think I'm just going to change paths and go in a completely different direction. And hey, maybe I want to go to law school. So changed my major to political science, and that was the degree that I graduated with. Had full intentions of going to law school, although that ended up changing eventually as well. But I think some of the things, that I really kind of took away from this experience in college, it wasn't always just the things that, I learned in a classroom. There was so much more to it with, like I mentioned, I was in a sorority, and the picture you just saw had, some of my closest sorority sisters who I'm still friends with today. I think one of them is actually listening live on here right now. But,
Yay.
it was such a great way to build those relationships, and just have that core group of friends in your life that you have for a lifetime. And it was, I think that was probably one of the most valuable parts of my college experience. Again, it's like, you learn so much from, hey, how do you, I took on some leadership roles. I think it was technically called vice president of new member education in my sorority, where I would help with, all the new pledges and get them educated and trained and get them through the process until initiation. And you got to, I got that experience of kind of learning a different type of leadership role of, okay, how do I, mentor someone who's newer? How do I help, guide them through this, difficult or challenging process, and get them through to the other side and where they want to be? So early on, I feel like it was a really valuable experience that, I was fortunate enough to have in college.
Well, I have to tell everybody out there, I've been around this lady a lot in the last couple of years, and I'm learning so many new things. Lacey, I had no idea. Number one, you were so artsy. It makes sense. Number two, sportsy, and we're going to see some of your balance pictures later. Kind of what you focus on to maintain balance in your life. I'm really excited to talk about that too. But also, all of this leadership from such a young age, and for everybody listening out there, young or old, it doesn't matter. I love the message that you're indirectly saying here too, Lacey. It's that there's always time to pivot and just to grow. Because I love, your story from college is very much like mine. I'm not going to get into it. The show's about you. But I love how you were just exploring things that you had interest in, whether it was interior design and then it was, ultimately political, maybe law school and ultimately political science. I think that also is the mark of a true leader to, not be afraid to move from a particular path that you're on to explore other things. And all of those things just kind of go in the bucket that is you, and kind of make up who you are. So really, really cool. What advice would you give to others about their education? Because yours was, certainly it wasn't a straight line. You had a lot of, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. Ultimately, you came out on the other side, poli sci, but then finally, went into sales and marketing, which seems like was in your blood, literally. Tell us, what advice would you give to others about their education as they kind of view that?
Yeah. So I think my advice, I mean, right along those lines, as you can see it, I didn't have that straight path. I changed my mind a lot. And I think my advice really be, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to not, have a clear answer on, hey, here's exactly what I want to do. I had no idea that I would end up in a sales role when I was in college. Wasn't even on my radar. And again, until I thought about it, I'm like, wow, this is kind of something I've always done. How did I not, figure this out before? How did I not know this? But um, I think knowing that, hey, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to try different things until you figure out what's the best fit. Um, and I think it's also really important to like find a mentor early. So whether those mentors are, your teachers or, your family, your neighbors, your friends, find someone who's there that, hey, you can bounce ideas off of. They've maybe been through some of these experiences before and they can help guide you and give you that advice to figure out the direction that's best for you to go in.
More great advice. Always have kind of a shoulder to lean on, someone you could bounce ideas off of. Looking back, was there a standout teacher or professor for you that comes to mind as someone that really helped kind of guide you and shape your path?
Yeah, so I had a couple. The one that comes top of mind is actually one of my high school teachers. So I was also kind of along with my, I guess, more creative side. I was also on the editorial staff of the yearbook committee for a couple of years. We had a really phenomenal photojournalism program. So it was our photojournalism teacher, and she was just so great at really like kind of giving you that opportunity to learn something new. Whether it was just, hey, I learned how to use all this design technology that kind of sometimes relates to some of the products that I sell today, to pushing me to, I actually, my senior year of high school, took on a new role with doing ad sales. So again, when I say I've been in sales for a long time, it started much earlier than some people think or that I remember, but it was a really neat thing. Like I would to leave school for an hour a day during lunch, and I would go to local businesses and help sell ad space for the yearbook. So it was a really cool way to, again, kind of interact with the community, meet people with in local businesses, and then um, get them involved with something the school was doing, help, sell those, help close the deals, make sure we were, meeting our numbers. And then I got to do a little bit of design on some of those too. So it was a really, fun experience. And I think that's what I appreciate so much about, my teacher, who kind of helped push me in that direction of, hey, maybe try this. This is something you might enjoy. You might be really good at it. Like, let's give it a try. And I always appreciate that kind of extra push or that suggestion.
I don't know that everyone fully appreciates how formative teachers are in our lives, good, bad, otherwise. Here's a great example of someone that really kind of pushed you to do something that ultimately you figured out you did love, and
Yeah.
that's super cool. Um, so, learning doesn't stop when you graduate college, or normally it doesn't. So, how do you kind of continue to learn and grow through the years as a leader?
Yeah. So this is something, I mean, I feel like I always do this, and I talk about this a lot in some of the, in my company and some of the internal courses that I help lead as well. But I think it's really important to kind of keep up with that proactive learning. So a lot of the things, especially when I got into this industry with, being in a sales role, selling specifically to the government, and then keeping up with technology, there were a lot of things to learn. There's always a lot of things to learn, and you've got to kind of keep up with the technology, keep up with the industry, and keep up with those changes. So for me, there were a couple things. One, it was always the easy one was, hey, take advantage of the trainings that you're offered. So anytime there was a, product training or a leadership training, I was the first to raise my hand. I'm like, great, I'll be there. Can't wait. But a lot of it too is that what I call like proactive learning. So I would take a lot of it upon myself of, okay, and when I first got into sales, the territory that I handled was the Department of Defense. I went in and subscribed to every news site, blog. I set up Google alerts for myself to make sure that hey, I need to know what's going on in the industry. And every single morning, I would start my morning with while I'm having not necessarily morning coffee, my morning tea actually. Since I'm not a coffee drinker, while I was having my morning tea or having breakfast, it was a good opportunity for me to kind of read those articles that came in throughout the evening of, okay, let me at least read one or two of these articles to keep up with just a relevant trend, a relative initiative, or understanding what's going on with the federal budget. So I would always take that opportunity to sign up for the right things and proactively learn. But same with attending, especially when it comes to building these relationships. And we've talked about I feel like you learn so much from other people and being around other people.
Yes.
It was just showing up to different events and getting involved in new events. So a lot of times that meant sitting through an entire day of sessions and listening to people talk. But I would learn so much and take away so many great things from that. And I think it's really just, one is saying yes to the opportunity when you have the opportunity to learn, but also, again, doing those proactive things that you can take upon yourself to, continue to educate yourself and others.
That's a great tagline, saying yes to the opportunity. And I had the opportunity just recently, everybody, to go with Lacey to Edge 2024. It used to be called Government CES, and to your point, Lacey, so many of those panels, I was thinking, man, I'd love to write an article about this, but I didn't really have a place to put something like that. But I sat through the talks anyway, and I learned so much, whether it was about artificial intelligence or cybersecurity. Some of them were talking at a level higher than, because that's their world and what they live in every day. But even just by osmosis, to kind of learn from people around you, I think is so critical. So, we talked about your college at Radford, and then you graduated poli-sci. So let's talk about your early careers. Tell us, where did you land initially?
Yeah. So right after college, my first job out of college was actually at a very, very small software company in Harrisonburg. They were selling software into higher education. I was actually in the accounting department. So I was not in sales. I got to be really, really great at using Excel, and calculating a lot of numbers and typing really fast. I also ended up having to make some collections calls as part of that role, which was not a fun part of the job.
Yeah.
So it was a good experience. I learned some valuable skills from it. It wasn't quite a fit for me. I learned that pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I also wanted to move. I was, pretty set on, hey, I want to, move up to the Northern Virginia area. I have friends there. I know that there's a ton of job opportunities in the area. I was really interested in something related to government. I'd actually interviewed for a couple government jobs, a couple government contractors. And during this process, I found Carahsoft. People think it's funny when I tell them, I actually would drive down the road, as I'm, coming through here, and I would write down names of companies that I would see, and I'd go home and look them up and look at their career site. And that's how I would find most of most of the jobs that I was looking at the time. But
Well, it's a good approach. I mean, if you're
yeah,
trying to find something close to where you
yeah,
live or where you want to live to see what's in the neighborhood and what the opportunities are, actually, I think it's pretty smart.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, it worked well for me. And then, I found Carahsoft, and I figured out pretty quickly that it was a good fit. I loved all the people that I met with, and, the people that I was going to be working with. Cause I'm like, it's important to like the people that you work with too. So, um, I loved the company culture. We were a really small company at the time. Back in, I've been here for 12 years. So, when I started in the beginning of 2012, we were a much smaller company. So it's been really cool to be part of that, and get to experience and see the growth as well. But it kind of had all the qualities that I was looking for, from, hey, I'm interested in sales. We can check that box. I'm interested in government. We can check that box. Um, and this seems like a good cultural fit as well.
Yeah, I mean, and you started small, but for those that don't know, Carahsoft is like a $17 billion master government aggregator, IT reseller, and Lacey's been a part of that from the beginning. So, what was your best experience?
Yeah. So my best experience, it was actually a really interesting experience. And it was hard to choose because I'm like, I've had so many really great ones, but I feel like this one was really unique. Um, so a couple years into my career, I was um, still a sales account manager. The primary account that I was supporting was the Navy. You can see the picture here from a really interesting project we worked on. It was with the USS Constitution when it was in dry dock in Boston. So um, a couple of us went up to Boston for a couple days. It poured down rain the whole time, but we still had a blast. It was chilly, even though it was May. And we did an entire 3D scan of the interior and exterior of the ship, so that we
Wow.
could create a digital twin of that, to use for maintenance, repair, and overhaul. So it was a really interesting project. I've got this one's up on top of the ship. I've got an even cooler one, but it was kind of hard to see where we're actually like under the ship. And like, how often do you really get to be like under the, oldest US commissioned ship? So it was a really interesting project, a really neat experience. And I think for me, it was, while it maybe wasn't, it was sales related because it was a customer that we sold to, and a project that we worked on jointly with the Navy, but it really just gave me a different, unique experience, that I could take a lot of things from and learn from. I learned some technical skills that I didn't necessarily have before, that I think helped me kind of, you know, get some more ideas for some of the things I was doing in my day-to-day job. But again, it was also another really neat experience of kind of getting to do something different, getting to really know and understand your customer and see, hey, what are their needs, what do they care about, and then just started to better develop and cultivate those relationships with them as well.
Yeah, it cracks me up when you said you were like sitting in some cubicles doing accounting spreadsheets. When you look at that picture, it's like, well, that's the Lacey I know. She's out and about on, learning
Yes.
learning things, talking to people, getting to know the customer. That's super cool. That would have been an awesome experience. Lacey, sometimes, we even learn from our worst experiences, right? Or the worst leader you ever ran into. Of course, we don't need to be using names or specific companies or anything like that here, but can you like just kind of anonymize something like this in such a way to say like, here was an experience. It wasn't the best, but this is kind of the nugget of wisdom I got out of that.
Yeah, I think so. My most challenge experiences have been and I've had a couple of these. Unfortunately, it wasn't just a one time thing, but especially in sales, when you lose a deal that you've been working on for months or for years, and it goes a different direction for some unforeseen reason. I've had it happen, a handful of times, as does everyone in sales. There's one in particular that stands out, um, of a partner that we used to work with, and again, it was a large customer. They took the deal in a totally different direction last minute, and unfortunately, it didn't go through us. But every time that's happened, I feel like I've learned a lot from it. And the biggest thing is like, not to give up and not to stop trying. This happened. The specific deal that I have in mind, it was probably about 5 years ago. We lost that deal.
Yeah.
It was a 3-year contract, and myself and my team, we didn't give up on it. It was like, okay, hey, we we didn't win it, but that's okay. For the next 3 years, what can we do to make sure that 3 years from now, this one comes back to us? And luckily it did. As I know
Oh,
that's not
wow.
always the case with everything, but I think the biggest thing I learned was, hey, don't give up. You don't have to take no for an answer. Um, I feel like that's something that, I always have in the back of my mind a lot of like, okay, sometimes no is the easy answer. And sometimes it's, hey, this is what happened. Okay, let's move on. But I don't always like that option. So I think figuring out, and again, it goes back to building relationships. So, hey, how do you still continue to, support that customer and help them out and, um, you know, get them on the path to be a customer again? How do you work with the partner to build those relationships and show the value of, hey, here's the value that we were bringing to this. Here's why we're part of this. How do we get this back in the right direction? So I think that's the important thing too, is, you don't have to take no for the answer, but then continue to use those relationships to your advantage to get something going back in the right direction again.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it's hard. It's almost harder sometimes, Lacey, when your model is built around relationships, and you do get that negative experience, that no or whatever it is, because then it's like, wait a minute, I thought we had a relation. It's just and so on one hand, it's like you're building these relationships. On the other hand, you have to realize that you cannot take it personally, right? That it's not personal, especially in business. It's about business. And I love that, just kind of keep going, see what you can do to turn things around. And sometimes you can't, sometimes it doesn't work out, but at least giving it a try. And because I think those relationships are key. And I love this story, how the person or the company came back 3 years later. I mean, you just never know. So keeping those doors open is really key. So as you think about your career, what tips would you give? Again, whether young or old, what tips would you give to people? I just heard one great nugget, never give up. Do you have any others?
Yeah. So I think my biggest one, which I think is especially super relevant right now, with where things are in the world, is just showing up and being present. I know, especially the last couple of years, I feel like, there's been a huge shift in, the in-person interactions that people have.
Yes.
Because we all get so comfortable with working from home. It's easy. I get comfortable with it too. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, but until you really get out there and, hey, whether it's showing up at an event, showing up in your office just to collaborate with your coworkers, you kind of forget how valuable that in-person interaction is. So taking the opportunity to, be there, just show up. It's that simple sometimes, just showing up and being present. You can really help develop these relationships again, whether it's internally with your own coworkers or your own team, or with, a team that you mentor, or a team that you manage, to, new folks in the industry or people that you haven't seen in a while. And for me, it's always something where, again, it's easy. It's always easy to just, hey, I'm going to stay home and work from home. But, there's that energy that you get from other people when you're out, when you're meeting in person, when you're attending an exciting event together. It's just really invaluable.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something about physicality, right? Like, I think there's something about, as you said, being present. We talked about education earlier, and I was a professor at a college, and they asked me my option: do you want to do it online or in person? And it wasn't convenient to go in person. It was an hour drive each way. And but I was thinking about my own kids, my own person, my own self. And I was just like, I think it's important to be present. It yeah, absolutely would have been easier, but just making those kind of, human to human connections in the classroom, at work, as you said, whether it's around the water cooler or, in someone's cubicle, it makes such a difference. So I think that is a great message, because I agree with you, Lacey. I think, the era of COVID, we're not quite past it. And, I don't know that I agree with the whole, like strong arming people to come back into the office. I think a balance is great. I think anything in balance is great, which actually is a very good way to transition to our next topic, which is about balance. Because, it's so hard when you're, a hard charging professional like yourself. You're in the government space. You're dealing with technologies, lots of companies juggling a ton of money. In the office, out of the office. How do you attain balance in your own life?
Yeah, so for me, I've always found it pretty easy to do that, to be honest. I've
That's
never really
impressive.
been, yeah, like I've never really been someone who kind of, I like to set some boundaries, but not those hard lines of like, like I'm someone who, and I'm sure most leaders are, most people probably listening to this are, hey, I'm available at any time. I'm available whenever I'm needed. But I've also, kind of taken a different perspective on it of, hey, sometimes if I have to do something, respond to an email or take a call, or, check my email or phone, after normal business hours, like it doesn't take up that much time out of my day.
Mhm.
And when I'm not looking at it as like hey, this is some big dwelling task I have to do, it takes a couple seconds to do something. And sometimes those just like those, quick responses and things like that just go such a long way. So I think a lot of it, honestly, is it's about perspective and how you see it. And again, setting some of those, again, kind of boundaries to some extent, but also like time blocking your day is something that I always do. I feel like I've always been pretty good at doing this of, whether it's, hey, this is, the hour of my day, I'm going to focus on this project and that's what I'm going to do for an hour. And then I'm going to move on. Here's an hour of my day. I'm going to, or 30 minutes of my day. Great. I'm going to catch up on emails and I'm going to do it. And I'm going to move on. And I plan things like that even in my personal life. And don't let it come across, I'm not like a super scheduled person who's always on an agenda. It's a very loose plan, very loose agenda that has a lot of flexibility to move around. But for me, it's always been helpful to kind of put together that list of, okay, here's what I'm planning to do today. And again, that list includes things and I kind of blend them together from these are things I'm doing at work. But it's everything even in my personal life too, from, planning my workouts, planning when, I cook dinner every night, planning when I'm going to cook dinner, making sure I plan downtime or time to relax too is also really important. But I think once you figure out, okay, what are those priorities and, realizing your to-do list doesn't have to be just full of work things. Your to-do list for your entire day includes some personal things too, and when and how are you going to get those done?
I, just listening to you resonates very strongly with me because, what I always told people, especially when I was a boss and I had people working for me, in the military in particular, is, what? Balance is hard. Like, to have balance actually takes work. And to say that you're like scheduling things for your personal life, I think is really important because, for many people, that's the first thing to go. It's just like they put all their eggs into the work basket. And then they, there's those different pillars of your life, right? Whether it's, obviously work, but there's the physical, emotional, spiritual. If you don't take care of those things, you're kind of useless to everybody, including to yourself. So I'd like to explore a little bit because you grew up as an athlete. What do you do to stay physically fit? And I think we might have a picture here that I saw. I think we can
Yeah,
share it.
there is one.
All right,
Um,
let's go ahead and roll
yeah,
that.
so
Look
for
at
me,
you.
I know that was in Runyon Canyon in LA. Um,
Wow.
I know it was such a great view. I was like, let me do like a cool yoga pose here and take a picture. Um, but yeah, for me, as far as, just maintaining the balance and the well-being, like I think it is so important to prioritize yourself and that time for yourself every day. For me, I like to, once I started working from home, I decided to repurpose my lunch break. So instead of going out and probably, eating a cheeseburger or something that I maybe didn't need, I decided that, hey, I'm going to start working out during this lunch break. And then, I can eat lunch at my desk while I'm on my next call. But I kind of repurposed that hour of time to, I have a Peloton bike at home. So started doing Peloton workouts. And it's something I do every day, every single day during lunch. And that time shifts. It's not a set time every day, but sometime generally in the middle of the day, I'm like, that's my time. It's my time for myself. And it was something I never did like in the middle of the workday before. But I thought it was so important once I started doing it because I noticed so many changes. Like the biggest one being is, by the afternoon, I'm like, I kind of get that like, after lunch, you get that afternoon slump at like, 2 or 3 o'clock. I don't have that anymore.
Yes.
And like taking that time in the middle of the day to just have a break for myself, a moment for myself. And again, some days, I have more time. Some days it's, let me just do a really short workout because, doing something is better than nothing. But putting that time for myself, it helped me re-energize. Like, I think it just helped me, you get up from your desk, you kind of move around that stagnant energy. And then it was a good reset in the middle of the day. So I'm like, okay, great, I'm back. So for me, I always love doing that in the middle of the day. But like, again, I do kind of plan things out where today I'm not home in the middle of the day to get on my Peloton bike. So that workout got shifted to, 7 o'clock this morning. So different time, even though I'm not a morning person who likes to work out in the mornings, but it's a thing where I've kind of told myself, okay, this is something that's important. It's important to take that time to yourself every day. And I'm going to do that. So, I like doing a lot of the things on the Peloton app, including the yoga classes, the strength classes. And I'm also a big fan of meditation. I used to do meditations at night. And then about the last year or so ago, I actually started shifting to doing those in the morning. So for me, it's kind of a nice way to start the day and, start the day with a clear mind. I've also done them like in the middle of the day, even just like a 5 or 10 minute, if you're having a rough day, you can always take 5 minutes and let me do a quick meditation or a quick, like, just stretch and move around. It's quick 5-minute reset and, you're back. So I think it's, whatever it is for you, that you find something that's, important to you, like just planning the time to, like, nope, this is a non-negotiable. I'm going to do this at some point today because it's time for myself.
No, that's critical. And I love what you said about also your, changing your perspective a little bit, because I think for some people, it's almost like, if I don't go to the gym for an hour and a half, then it's not worth it. But, like you said, you could do a 5-minute meditative reset mentally and feel so much better. You can do a 30-minute, interval workout, pretty intense, and walk away feeling pretty energized afterwards, for that afternoon, right? So
Yeah.
it's all about perspective and taking that time. And I think that's, I think that is a recipe for success. Any other tips in that arena when you think about balance that you want to share? Like, say you were counseling one of the people that worked for you, what would you tell them about balance in their lives?
Yeah. So I think, I talked a little bit about how it's a lot of it too is all on your perspective, and just kind of moving that energy around. But I think it's important to really focus on, instead of just the work-life balance, but like really balancing your energy and putting as much energy as you can into the things you like doing. There's going to be parts of your, I always teach it, like, don't take it the wrong way, because that doesn't mean that you just can't do the things that you don't like to do.
Right.
There's always going to be things that you don't really enjoy, but you have to do them. But I think when you really, put the focus on, for me, it's like, again, there's things in my job that, I love, coaching new sales leaders. I love taking on new projects, like those types of things. I love doing, some of the in-person events. I'm like, great, how do I do more of those things? Because again, that gives me energy and I enjoy it. To the things in my personal life, like, the working out that we talked about. Like, I also love to cook. I cook every day. It's like, for me, it's not a task. It's my favorite part of the day. And I'm like, okay, like, how do I, do more with coming up with new recipes and cooking? And like, those are the things that I've noticed, like, that's what gives me energy. And that's what gets me excited to do all these other things. And it makes the hard things that you don't like as much a little easier when I think you can shift that perspective. And okay, the things I don't like, hey, I'm going to get through this. And if I just do it, it's probably going to take me 10 minutes and then we're done and we can move on. But when you fill your time with more of the things that you enjoy doing, I think it makes it much easier to keep that balance.
Absolutely. And leading others obviously is something you do on a daily basis. What would you say is the most rewarding aspect of leading others?
So I think for me, the most rewarding is really just like, watching your team grow and watching them become leaders too. I've had the opportunity in the last 12 years that I've been here to, build out a team, grow that team. And some of my team has, I've got people on my team who have worked with me for years. So it's so great. And I know you've met some of them too, Dawn, and
I
see,
have.
the emerging leaders on my team. So I think for me, that's the most rewarding, is being able to see them grow in their careers as well and become leaders.
Very cool. Here's a pic. What's this pic from?
Yeah, so this one is actually from a couple years ago, from the USGIF Geo Gala. It's a black tie event for the intelligence community that's hosted every fall. It's one of my favorite events of the year. And I put this picture in here because to me, this one is a picture of me with a couple people who I see as leaders in the industry, who have been there, to help support me and who help support other emerging leaders. So, it's always a great example too of them, like, hey, putting yourself in these scenarios with, more senior leaders in the industry, people who are, willing to help you, to guide you, to give you advice, can really help you come a long way.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. Best boss and why?
Oh, well, this one's an easy one. So it's my current boss.
Craig.
I say Craig and Tiffany as well, who you got to meet
I
last week.
did. I finally got to meet her.
Yeah, and I think, with both of them, it's I think just having that support and the trust, is what's been really important to me. It's something that I've noticed with, my bosses. Hey, they trust me. They trust my guidance. They trust my opinions, and they also trust that, like, if I need help, I'm going to ask and I'm going to go to them for questions. And that's something I've always taken, into my leadership style as well, as, hey, I want to trust my team and I want them to know that I trust them. So they feel confident in what they're doing. They feel confident coming to me and asking for help or asking for guidance. So I think that's been one of the really kind of key things that has stood out, is just, having trust. And again, I mean, I've also worked with my bosses for 12 years. So it gives you a lot of time to build a really great relationship and build that trust. But I feel like it's also something that, I've had from the beginning here too.
And that's actually rare for, I think you're kind of unique, Lacey, in a way that you stayed with one company for 12 years in tech, and in emerging tech in particular. So that's really cool. So we are almost to the end of the show. I love to do this lightning round at the end. So this is kind of quick hits, Lacey. I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions, and then we'll go from there. So number 1, your favorite book.
Oh, my favorite book. Getting tough one. So I'm going to tell you my favorite type of book. My favorite type of book is a cookbook. So probably not your standard answer to what you're expecting, but, like, I will read a cookbook from, like, front to back. I like to read all the stories in it. I like to read the recipes in it. And just all of kind of the unique origins of where food comes from, and the different cultures and the different types. So for me, I would say that's my favorite type of book. That's the type of book that I read the most. I've got a couple new ones recently that I've been going through. So it's fun to go.
I have one to put on your list. My son just bought this for me. It's called Unprocessed.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to try that.
Check it out.
I will.
All right, number 2. Who's your hero and why?
I would say both of my parents. Like we talked about at the beginning, it's they're both small business owners. They've started their own companies and have been really successful in growing those companies.
All right, I love that. And last but not least, what's the one thing that you want to leave to everybody, just in closing?
Yeah, so I think, and I'll kind of relate it back to this topic of building relationships. So if you're looking to, build new relationships, I would kind of challenge you with, hey, the next week or 2 weeks, go find a new event or a new group or something you haven't been to before, where you can just simply meet one new person. You're probably going to meet a lot more than one, but focus that on, hey, how do I just go meet, one new person? But then on the other hand, I also think it's just as important to nurture and grow your existing relationship. So, again, challenge you with, pick up the phone, give someone a call that you haven't talked to for a while, go grab a coffee, grab lunch with them, and just continue to kind of keep those conversations going.
I love all of that. And Lacey, you're obviously an extrovert, at least in many respects. You may be on the line between I and E, but for some people that's really hard to do. So I think you use the right word, that you challenge people to do that, because for some people it is a challenge. But I agree with you 100%. Building those relationships, it's what life is all about. So put yourself out there, make that phone call today. And Lacey, I want to thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your story and also giving us all of these different leadership tips. I think it was amazing.
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody, once again, follow Lacey on social media, check out Carahsoft. And if you go to my website, P3 Tech Consulting, you'll see the couple places where she's been, and also Carahsoft is supporting our live event, Law Tech Connect workshop. So come on down, everybody. That is all she wrote. Remember, leaders build relationships. We are out here.